That's one small step for man, one giant leap for bad books.
Hi there, readers. It's Chris with Deep Dive Books, the show where a librarian talks about books. Moon People by Dale Courtney. If you go prospecting for bad books on the web, you're going to come across Moon People almost immediately. But bad book is a term I use very loosely, as I will explain later. In fact, I consider Moon People a masterpiece. I know I tend to front-load a lot of information in these videos, but I want to jump into the plot of Moon People as quickly as possible. That said, there are a couple of quick things you need to understand going in. This is a self-published book. Self-published books are low-hanging fruit for anyone making a funny video or podcast, but I will say it again. This book is a treasure, and I absolutely adore it. This is not a hit piece. Because this book is self-published, it is very badly written. There's no denying that. Dale Courtney writes as if he's never read a book before. If he attended school, which seems dubious, I can imagine his report card sporting a big fat D- in English, with perhaps a softening remark from his teacher. Student is very imaginative, but fails to grasp the rudiments of written language. As we explore this book together, some parts of the text will be displayed on the screen, others simply read aloud as the situation calls for. I'm going to do my best to strike a balance between making small corrections for the sake of comprehensibility, leaving things as they are to preserve the author's unique voice, and yet not giving undue emphasis to the mistakes and malapropisms. It's going to be tricky. October 27th, 2048. NASA is busy constructing a trio of massive space stations known as lunar bases. The sheer scale and cost of the project suggests this is a time of unparalleled prosperity and cooperation for all mankind. However, a few of the most recent supply launches have run into some kind of weird problem. The next launch is scheduled for October 31st, Halloween, which has everyone feeling very suspicious. Don't ask me why. David Bramer is a high school science teacher in Daytona Beach, Florida. NASA has been trying for years to recruit him to work on the lunar bases. In the past, David has worked for the government doing UFO research, but he found it boring. Besides, he likes his school, so he's not interested in going into space. David is driving to his favorite restaurant one morning when the emergency broadcast system interrupts his favorite song.
Ladies and gentlemen, today NASA Observatory has spotted a huge meteor headed toward Earth at a high rate of speed, coming very close. However, NASA officials believe that it will not hit Earth.
Now, don't go feeling relieved just yet. This radio announcer guy sure has a strange way of trying to calm the masses.
We're not sure about anything yet. What we do know is it's coming from the direction of the constellation of Scorpio at the tail area, heading this way going approximately 60,000 miles an hour. And it is a planet killer. We repeat, please do not panic. Now we resume to your regular programming.
That's reassuring. Look, everybody stay calm. Everything's fine. Don't make any plans for next week, but just be chill. David arrives at the restaurant, which has no name, but I'm going to call it Cheryl's Place. Cheryl is the owner, and yes, that's really how her name is spelled. I don't know if it's pronounced Cheryl or Cheryl, but I'm going with Cheryl. David fancies Cheryl, and when he sees her, he shares what he's just heard on the radio. Stunned, Cheryl switches on the television, which is showing nothing but news about the meteor.
At the current rate of speed, it should be here in about 178 days. Now we believe it's going to miss us by 25,000 miles. It's going to be real close. We will be following it very closely. Please, it's very important not to panic. It won't help at all.
I know 25,000 miles is a frighteningly near miss in astronomical terms, but it's still 3 times the diameter of the Earth. Maybe lead with that instead of dwelling on the futility of widespread panic? Fortunately, the regulars at Cheryl's Place are a dauntless and unflappable bunch, so they go back to their breakfasts with stiff upper lips. David orders his favorite meal, the 222, then works up the courage to finally ask Cheryl out on a date.
Cheryl put a sexy smile on her face and said,
"You know, I would really like that a lot."
David put a big smile on his face.
They agree to go out to dinner that Friday. David heads to school where we meet two of his favorite students, Billy Berenson and Kathy Rigby. If one of those names sounds faintly familiar to you, that's because Kathy Rigby is a former Olympic gymnast who later played Peter Pan on Broadway. I don't know if that was an intentional homage on Dale Courtney's part, or if he just happened to pull that name from thin air, but it sure would be a strange coincidence. My pet theory is that Courtney had a crush on Rigby as a kid and never quite got over it. From here on, I'm going to Google every character name to see if there's some strange real-world connection. I'll let you know if I find any. Anyway, the class is pretty jittery over the news about the meteor, so David decides to get out his telescope so they can check it out. David has a special new telescope called Zeus that can survey the cosmos in broad daylight. It's hooked up to an 80-inch chalkboard computer monitor, or what we would call a smartboard. Before David and the class can get situated, David receives an urgent phone call. It's Bud Walker, head of operations at NASA. His lead astronomer in charge of the lunar base project has been in an accident, and NASA needs a replacement right away, somebody who's the best at what he does. "Well, I don't know about being the best," David says, "but I do teach astronomy in high school, and I have been into astrology for about 20 years. Boy, NASA must be buying into this whole no one wants to work anymore mindset if they're scraping the bottom of the barrel like this. Walker launches right into a used car salesman pitch, saying, "We are willing to go the extra mile here. We will pay top dollar on this one, and we have a substitute to take your place at school." Fellow teachers, can you imagine logging into your absence management portal for this one? Reason for absence: going into space. Length of absence: 10 years. That's right, the lunar base mission means a decade in deep space. Walker also mentions that there's some new information about the meteor that he can only share with David if he accepts the job. He says David can have until 5 o'clock that evening to think it over. You know, plenty of time to contemplate a decade in the void. David heads back to class and resumes setting up his telescope. Turns out the scope has artificial intelligence, so David can just talk to it like Alexa. "Zeus, can you locate and lock in on the meteor that is moving toward us at a high rate of speed in the constellation of Scorpio?"
Affirmative. Located.
This impresses the class so much that they begin saying things in unison.
The whole class made a wow sound, and then they all said about the same time, "Cool."
This is something that happens frequently in Moon People. People say things either in perfect unison or at about the same time. According to Zeus, the meteor is 10 kilometers in diameter. It's heading toward our solar system, and it's speeding up. Billy yells out, "Ask Zeus if the meteor is going to hit Earth!" David is hesitant to ask, though, because he fears the answer could create a panic. But the class continues to badger him. "Okay, listen very carefully, class. If you hereby pledge to this class and to God that you will not tell anyone what we find out in this class about the meteor, I will ask Zeus that question." The class agrees. "Okay, Zeus, will this meteor collide with any planet in our solar system?"
Negative. There is a 94% possibility that it will collide with your sun.
I love the way Zeus calls it your sun, as if it, being a telescope, is not a member of the human world and doesn't recognize our names for celestial objects. "Zeus, is there a chance that it won't hit our sun?" This is where I have to give Zeus credit for not saying something sarcastic, like
100 minus 94 equals a 6% chance it will not hit the sun, dummy.
For some reason, this does nothing to allay the class's fears. Zeus has confirmed the meteor will not hit Earth and that it will more than likely fly into the sun. If you're worried about the sun, don't be. I'm no astronomer, but I can tell you that the sun comprises more than 99% of the mass in our solar system. All the planets could crash into the sun at the same time, and the sun wouldn't even notice. In fact, the planets would probably vaporize before they even got close. That same day, David heads down to NASA headquarters to meet Bud Walker. Bud shares the latest on the meteor. Not only has it been speeding up, it's been changing direction. It's no meteor, it's a spacecraft. Given this startling development, the White House orders a near-immediate deployment of the lunar bases, moving up their launch to just 4 days from now. Humanity must be prepared to meet the aliens in deep space. Walker, at this point, really leans into his sales pitch, promising David the amazingly multifaceted rank of captain, first science officer, navigator, and astronomer. Then he gets all Captain America on him for some reason, saying, "It doesn't get any rawer than this. It takes a special kind of man to do something like this, but if you have the stones, we've got the job for you." You'd think this is the kind of offer that demands an immediate answer, but NASA is still happy to give David all the time in the world, up until the morning of the launch, to make up his mind. Luckily, the decision comes easily to David, who reflects, "I do love space and everything in it." Despite his preoccupation with the launch date of October 31st, David decides to accept the lunar base commission and calls the commanding officer, Admiral Benson, to tell him so. Wait a second. Admiral Benson? That's this guy from the movie Hot Shots.
Looks like the upper hand is on the other foot, Sodom.
I don't know if that's who Dale Courtney pictured when he wrote Admiral Benson, but it's definitely not who I pictured. Here's my Admiral Benson. Okay then, welcome aboard. The last shuttle takes off at 0900 on Monday morning. By the way, did you realize that Monday was Halloween? If you're predicting that the Halloween subplot, if you can call it a subplot, goes absolutely nowhere, you're right. That doesn't keep David and his friends from mentioning it every chance they get. You and I are going on one hell of a ride Monday morning. Trick or treat. That's pretty cool, sir. I can't wait. The next day, David gets his affairs in order at school and then meets up with Cheryl for their big date at Red Lobster. After dinner, they park at the beach and start making out. And may I say, Dale Courtney really knows how to write some steamy love scenes. Here's a great example.
She leaned in toward David, and they kissed passionately for about a minute, and then stopped.
In fact, the key to great romance seems to be specifying the duration of any lovemaking session. David takes Cheryl back to his place where they make passionate love for a very long time. Before David steps onto the space shuttle the next morning, they make out again.
They kissed passionately for about 5 minutes, and Cheryl started crying and said,
"I'm going to miss making love to you." David gets his physical and psychological evaluation done the morning of the launch, and fortunately for humanity, I guess, he passes both. The shuttle leaps into the atmosphere, and happy Halloween, NASA! And yes, the shuttle captain wishes NASA a happy Halloween, and David gets his first glimpse of the heavens.
As they were coming close to Lunar Base 1's docking bay, he noticed how vast space really looked.
Okay, here's where we should take a look at the lunar bases themselves, the majestic spacecraft that will carry humankind into the cosmos.
Everybody laughs about the way the base stations look. They look like a giant empty toilet paper holder from Earth.
Despite their ridiculous appearance, they are also very nicely decorated and very classy looking too. Each of the 3 stations measures 1/16 of a mile in diameter with a length of 1/8 of a mile. That's 330 feet by 660 feet, and no, I'm not going to tell you how many football fields that is. The lunar bases boast an astonishing range of amenities, including a couple of bars, a couple of shopping malls, a basketball court, a small farm, a hospital, an observatory, several restaurants, lounges, and gyms, 1-bedroom apartments for every crew member, and an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Like me, you might be wondering whether all this stuff could fit in a 330 by 660 foot space. Well, here's that space overlaid on a random portion of Manhattan. It looks like it covers about a block and a half, which is a decent amount of space. Plus, each lunar base has 10 stories. Each one would get a little narrower as it approached the ceiling or the floor of the toilet paper tube, but that's still a reasonable expanse of floor space. So even though it sounds like a ridiculous amount of stuff to have on a space station, I'll give our author a pass on this one. David is introduced to Lieutenant Heather Courtney, no relation to the author. She is just the first of about 1,000 lieutenants in the lunar base program. I don't really know anything about military ranks, so I could be wrong, but it seems like there are altogether too many lieutenants on this station. On that topic, after doing a little research, I have to say it's quite a bold move granting a high school science teacher the rank of captain. In the United States Navy, captain is one of the highest ranks there is. Captains are the commanding officers of aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyer squadrons, and SEAL teams. I think it's more realistic that David would be recruited as a civilian contractor of some type, but I guess that's not as cool as being a captain. After a restful first night aboard Lunar Base 1, David uses the ship's automated food delivery system to order what I think could be the 222 special from Cheryl's place. Computer, I would like a cup of coffee and 2 fried eggs over easy with 2 pieces of bacon and also 2 pieces of buttered rye toast. Also in my coffee, I would like 2 tablespoons of sugar and a little cream.
Affirmative. Please allow 2 minutes.
So it's not a 222 after all, it's a 22222. That morning, David has his first shift on the command bridge, where Admiral Benson says, I would like those who are not familiar with their area to please do so. That's right, apparently most of the personnel on board have never set foot on the bridge before and have no idea how to operate any of the equipment at their stations. David himself recognizes a few of the gadgets at his workstation, but finds himself stymied by many others. After a while, I guess the pilot or whoever finally figures out how to start the engine, and we're given a needlessly specific countdown sequence.
It was T-minus 4 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. Then it got down to T-minus 43 seconds.
Yes, that's how linear time works. Go on.
Then it got down to T-minus 15 seconds and counting. Then 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4.
Lunar Base 1 is officially underway, leaving Earth's orbit for deep space. Its mission is to first visit Mars, then head to Saturn's moon, Titan. Admiral Benson orders the ship's speed brought up to Mach 5, which doesn't seem nearly fast enough for an interplanetary cruiser. Traveling at 5 times the speed of sound, it would take almost 3 years to reach Mars, and I'm not even going to do the math for Titan. For reference, NASA currently estimates that the first manned mission to Mars would take 7 months each way. So Lunar Base 1 should be able to do far better than Mach 5. As soon as the ship is well on its way, Admiral Benson dismisses non-essential crew from the bridge. Those of you not connected to the running of the ship can stay or leave at your own will. If not sure, ask permission. It's just like a middle school study hall. If you need to go to the bathroom, just ask. If you're not sure what you should be doing, raise your hand. If you need to go to your locker, get a hall pass. Not long into the journey, the mysterious meteor/spacecraft appears on the scanners. It's blinking on and off, changing velocity constantly, but eventually it ends up parked near Pluto. Admiral Benson, acting on orders from the White House, directs Lunar Base 1 toward Pluto to meet the aliens. This time they push the engines to Mach 7. Care to guess how long it would take to reach Pluto at Mach 7?
Well, let's see. Mars at Mach 5 took a little under 3 years. Pluto is much farther away, but they're also traveling a lot faster. I'll go out on a limb and say 8 years.
66 years. Since they apparently have so much time on their hands, Admiral Benson urges the crew to study up on ship-to-ship combat in case the aliens prove hostile. At a briefing, David pipes up and asks, "Well, sir, I was wondering if we had any kind of shield, sir, like on Star Trek?" "Very good question, Captain. The answer is yes, we do. Our shields are all over on certain parts of the ship in vital areas on the outside. They are a liquid that turns into the strength of 4 inches of steel when it gets hard because of being exposed to the cold of space. They also have heaters on them to turn back into a liquid state again." "Wow, that's impressive. Thank you, sir." Any time, Captain. That was a good question. Imagine a captain on an aircraft carrier in wartime asking something like, "Does this vessel carry aeroplanes that can fly into the sky like in Top Gun?" And the fleet admiral being like, "Yes, the airplanes drive real fast off the edge of the runway and that allows them to fly into the air. Great question, Captain." The Admiral suggests everyone watch the Lunar Base 1 Battle Ready training video so they'll be ready for a fight if it comes to that. This is one of my favorite details in the entire book. They're preparing for intergalactic warfare as if they're about to play laser tag for the first time.
Greetings, warriors. I am your Lasertron Information Guide. For the next few minutes, I'll be briefing you on the proper use of your phasers, as well as the accepted rules of engagement. This is vital information that could ensure your success in battle, so please pay close attention.
The crew studies for a couple of hours, so humanity can rest easy knowing our solar system is in good hands. Chapter 14 is where this book gets really interesting, but we're gonna have to take a break here, otherwise this video will be like an hour long. We'll wrap up the plot of Moon People in part 2 of this miniseries, and then take a hard look at the strange man responsible for this book in part 3. Thanks for watching, and as always, please hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. And until next time, happy reading and use a bookmark.
It is important that you obey your safety instructions. Do not run. Do not climb. Do not lie down on the floor. Do not chew gum. You must stay at least 5 feet away when shooting at an opposing player. And do not touch anyone.